Welcome, Alan. You have the portal.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, sounds okay. Cool. I speak a little bit softly, so I'll just put a hand up if you can't hear me. Um, Wonderful to be with you via the amazing causes and conditions of electrons and electricity and light and things. So I can be there on Zoom, and maybe I'm more present there than if I was there in person. Who knows? Um, I've been to Santa Barbara. Was there a couple of years ago for the first time and felt very at home there. I really appreciated this. There was just I felt a real gentleness in the air and a sort of a softness, probably helped by, the weather. And I remember the colors of some of the older buildings and yeah, so I have a fond memories of being there. Um, and my partner's first name is Barbara too. And it just made me, when I moved to California, which was about 6.5, 7 years ago, it only struck me like 3, 4 years in. Oh my goodness, all of these city names like San Francisco and Santa Barbara and like San Jose, these are all like saints and obviously Catholic saints. But I like to think of, I hope these were wise ancestors, maybe. So, I want to learn more about Saint Barbara. I love that it's a female name. And yeah, so I have some curiosity about that. So after today, it just struck me kind of joining this morning. I was like, oh, I wonder who Saint Barbara was. Um, I will say, whatever I share today, I like to think of it as really just encouragement for your own practice. So I'll share I like the phrase experience, strength, and hope. So I'll share a little bit of what's helped me on my journey, and I hope it's helpful for you. Uh, I have a particular interest, I guess, in making practice accessible. And I'm really interested in language, so I write, fiction and poetry, and um, I I really love language, and I think there's a lot of power in language, but we can also get really tied up in knots with language. And I think there's a lot of playfulness in language too. So it's kind of evident in the title of my talk. Um, I where I live we live in Oakland in the Bay Area, and I don't know if you've been here, but there's a lot of potholes in Oakland, kind of perennial potholes. Occasionally they get paved, and I grew up in Ireland in the 80s, and there was a lot of potholes in Dublin when I grew up, and not a lot of money to fill them. And things have changed, and Ireland's become very polished, and for lots of reasons. Um, I have a lot of nostalgia, and like when I see a pothole, I feel at home. I feel really at home when I see a pothole. There's something about it I really like. So I wanted to name that. And part of what I want to share today is I'll kind of, reflect on a couple of notions that are central, I think, to our practice and how I say the concepts of like practice enlightenment, um, the idea of already being whole somehow. And one of the things I really appreciate about our practice is its orientation to challenges or difficulties. And so, when we do encounter a pothole, and it kind of feels right now in the world, there's just lots of potholes. Um, there's a way in which, and I would actually, if I could make this longer, I would, because I think it's both a pothole and a portal, because there are potholes. Yes, there are actual potholes, and there are difficulties. Um, People pass. We encounter. When we know this, part of our practice is about uh, open-eyed seeing of difficulty and suffering, or whatever term we might use. But what I find really generous and graceful about our practice is uh, a way of being with that. So the pothole is also a portal. Those difficulties are also uh, a way in and a way through. I was talking to my teacher, Tim, one time, and I had this question for him, which was I feel this ache. I feel this longing in my heart sometimes. I feel this really real ache. And sometimes it feels like a hole, maybe like a pothole, but it feels like a hole. And I asked him, like, does that go away? Or like, how do we work with that? And he didn't say anything. And then as he was sitting there in silence, it came to me, oh, because he'd been saying to me continually, like, feel into your sensations and be with what's there. And it struck me in that moment that the way to work with that is to really just that be with it and keep it company and get really intimate with it, get really, really familiar with it, and not in a there's a problem to be solved way that I'm going to figure out in my head, but rather in a more childlike, uh, curious way, um, from a heart of compassion, from a heart of tenderness, just to be with that, that whole. And what struck me, and even in that moment, I did that. I just took a moment and I took a breath. And just let myself feel into that ache. And I noticed that it's really alive and it's really rich. And that somehow it's not a whole. And I know this is sort of, I don't mean to over egg the playing with words, but there is wholeness there, so that distinction between like a whole and then being whole. And then, of course, I thought, I don't mean, of course, that I realized, it just struck me in that moment. I'm sure we're all familiar with the figure of an Enso. So the sort of the Zen circle. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's a whole, but it's also everything. And it contains everything. And it's also nothing, but not nothing in the negative space sense, although there's lots of space in it, but it's really full. It's really, really full of everything. Um, so I really appreciate, our practice is such a uh, grounded, gentle, embodied way of working with all of that, working with what it is to be human. Um, and I mention embodied because, I know when I came to practice, so much of what I came with was, I'm going to figure this out because I love ideas and I love to read and I love intellectual pursuits and I was going to crack this thing. And because I'd lived a lot of my life that way. Um, and I now realize that as a sort of survival strategy, I had to kind of come up into this part of my body and so into my head. Much of my practice journey has been the short but very long distance from here, to my neck and like down below and into the rest of my body. So it's, being grounded in all of that. So what I appreciate about our particular way of practicing is we attune to these things, we attune to our experience from a fully, full body, heart, mind um, place of practice. Our practice is so simple. We sit down on a cushion or in a chair, or maybe we lie down. Maybe when we lie down, we fall asleep. We have a little nap. That's okay. I'm a big fan of napping. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book Rest is Resistance. A lot of praise of napping. But there's a way in which we just pause and let ourselves be and be still. And yeah, just be with what's here as best we can. Um, you know, I sometimes think about the word mindfulness and when I first encountered practice and first encountered Zen and then was reading some books about mindfulness and I think like all of us, I wanted to do this right. I wanted to be a good student and I wanted to be a good practitioner and be mindful. And for me, that looked like moving very slowly and, doing it the right way and like having a perfect posture. And I just wanted to crack this. Like I wanted to just do it properly. And lately words like heartfulness or playfulness or, other things that help us attune to like really this is a very, very, very simple practice. And it's really just, bringing some gentleness, bringing some lightness to ourselves. And I think that's really one of the most important things, to bring some kindness to ourselves and then to our experience and just pausing and, making a bit of space for what's here. So I'm sharing that because that's a sort of, I guess that's some background to what I wanted to talk a bit more about today. And this talk, it's a little bit circular and it'll be a little bit of a ramble because I find myself when I do, share thoughts and practice, it's always the same ideas, but I'm always trying to find fresh ways to express it. But yeah, really, I guess this anchoring idea of, we practice and somehow in our tradition, we're already enlightened. I like to say, well, I'm sure you've heard the Suzuki Roshi phrase, you're perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement. Or, we make effort, but we make effort from a place that trusts or at least wants to believe that we're already whole. And so I think of another set of words, the word whole and heal, and that, well, they have the same etymology. So whole, W-H-O-L-E, and the word heal. So somehow, rather than being broken and needing to be fixed, what if, we're already radiant, whole beings? And yes, we have experienced difficulties and there is some wounding, because that seems to be part of what it is to be human. And part of our journey in our practice is to allow for healing to happen. And it's my experience now, it was my belief. I wanted to believe it, but I didn't for a while. And now it's my experience that healing actually wants to happen. Healing, unfolding, growing has its own energy that just wants to unfold. And that there's a way in which when we can pause and just, again, be with our experience, it seems to support that happening. I'm brought to mind of the California poppy. I love the California poppy, and it's new to me because we've poppies in Ireland, but they're not like the classic red poppy. They're sort of a pinky light red. They grow wild, and there's something about the metaphor of a flower or a plant and this idea of there's this potential and there's this unfolding. There's an unfolding and this sort of very organic, natural growth that wants to happen. And so I guess what I'm playing with here are different metaphors or ways of like attuning to our practice. Less about we're going to make something happen. And I know I felt that way. And more about, attuning or letting go or settling into. There's a phrase in, let's find it here. So there's a phrase in one of, I'm sure you've all heard of HH Dogen, the founder of our Soto Zen tradition. And in one of his fascicles, I think it's in Bendoa. There's a phrase where he says, I'll just read you just some of these words. It is never apart from this very place. what is the use of traveling around to practice? It's never apart from this very place. It's right here. No need to go anywhere. It's beautiful to travel to practice. It's beautiful to visit centers and to encounter other practitioners. And I love the idea of pilgrimage. And yet, foundationally, it's never apart from this very place. And then he says, and yet, if there is a hair's breadth deviation, it is like the gap between heaven and earth. If the least like or dislike arises, the mind is lost in confusion. So I remember hearing that phrase, and that phrase, if there is a hair's breadth deviation. And I was looking this up yesterday. I wonder if anyone knows how wide a hair is. I certainly didn't. And how many hairs would it take to create an inch? And the internet told me that, and I'm sure many of you are thinking, well, it depends on the hair, of course. And I've got fine hair, or I've got thick hair, or, but there's a range of something like 140 to like 1,000, but sort of the average is about, I don't know, 250 hairs. So it takes about 250 hairs to fill an inch. So, 1/250th of an inch is the fineness of the gap between heaven and earth. That's the amount of the deviation. And I remember when I first heard that phrase, I'll be honest, I was like, oh crap. Like if I miss it by that tiny, tiny amount, like I've missed it. Like that's so easy to miss. That's such a tiny, tiny, like how can you pay attention to like something that small? I'm just going to miss it all the time, like obviously, and I already am. And so kind of like, well, what's the point? Like, let's just give up. But I continue to practice. But I remember reading that phrase and really feeling discouraged by it. And it struck me at some point, the last couple of years, I don't think he means it that way. And the way I like to interpret that now is the return to just this. The return to a tender heart. The return to a memory of some kind person who you experienced in your life, or even some kind person you never met, but can evoke. The remembering to remember. The shift back to that is tiny. You don't have to strive and strive and strive and strive. It's just like, oh, there I go again. And it's just the subtlest little, oh, I can just let go a little bit. It's just this micro, okay, it's right here. It's right here. So I experienced that as a really gracious and generous and kind way of orienting to our experience and to our practice. And every moment, and whenever we remember, and even if we're sitting on our cushion, and I don't know about you, but I know a lot of my sitting on a cushion has been filled with, you suck at this. Like this is terrible, terrible zazen. Your posture is really bad and like your legs hurt. And then all sorts of other, stuff. And I love the gentleness of phrases like, when you sit in zazen, keep your front door and your back door open, and let your thoughts come and go. Just don't serve them tea. Just let them come and go. Just don't invite them in to hang around. Or the phrase, the title of the book by Uchiyama Roshi, Opening the Hand of Thought, when we're gripping onto things. I like to do this guided meditation for folks where we imagine we're sitting on a beach by the ocean. And we imagine on the out breath that the waves are coming ashore. You can see the beach now in Santa Barbara. Now the out breath, the waves come ashore. It's kind of interesting how our breath makes that kind of like wave crashing sound if you listen to it closely. And then on the in-breath, the waves are receding. And I invite people to imagine a beach that feels safe and comfortable, not too hot, not too cold, and just breathing with the waves. And at some point, I like to mention, you might notice thoughts arising. And I like to frame that as, birds in the sky on your beach. And I don't know what it's like down there right now. I was in Dublin last year. I've forgotten how many seagulls there were. In Dublin, there were very large, loud seagulls. I remember we were staying in this house and I just hearing them in the morning. So on your, in this meditation, are there birds in the sky? And if there are birds in the sky, just imagine those as your thoughts. And whether there's lots of birds, a couple of birds, no birds, not one is better than another. I mean, it's just birds doing their thing. And I like to encourage people that if you find yourself stuck on a thought, to imagine that you're cradling a bird in your hand. A bird has landed in your hand and you're kind of holding on to it a little bit. And just that very gentle micro adjustment of relaxing your grasp and letting the bird fly away. Or maybe the bird just sits there with you. Sits there and breathes calmly in your hand. But really, I feel like the heart of our practice is this very, very gentle, subtle, hair's breadth return. And we can return and we can return. It's just a really subtle, just remembering. I was at an event related to working with the body. And I think it was based on sort of somatic experiencing work or something informed by that. So related to healing and working with the body. And they did this practice, and you feel free to do it with me if you want. But what they talked about was these micro movements, and the movement we were doing was just like imagining painting an S in the air with your nose, with just the subtlest movement, or like moving your nose up and to the left and down and to the right by the width of a hair. So there's something about, the shift here is really tiny. That tiny shift is so significant. I think about how when we sit on our cushion and we find some way of comfortable way of being, or we sit in our chair and we do these very subtle things, like we might hold our hands in this mudra, this cosmic mudra, which of course has this circle or this hole that is also whole with a W and somehow encompasses everything. And we just, let our awareness rest there. And then when we drift away, just this very gentle return. We might notice our hands have become a little bit tense, and we can just seek to reduce or release the tension by 1/100th of a percent, which is the tiniest remembering. So I wanted to share that with you because I feel like, I speak for myself, our practice, especially as Westerners, whether we grew up in a religious tradition or not, we were certainly schooled in the ways of being in the world that involve all sorts of good things, but a lot of focus on doing and achieving and making things happen, which are all wonderful. Like, so the channeling of energy in pursuit of something is really beautiful. For me, when I came to this practice, I brought a lot of that, like achieving and doing energy, and then so there's all of these forms, and so I wanted to do this perfectly, and I wanted to, like I mentioned, like sit perfectly and get it all right. What's really struck me over the years is Suzuki Roshi in the book Zen My Beginner's Mind, in the preface, there's a phrase where he talks about beginner's mind, and if you read it and then you kind of go out further down the passage, it's not quite edited this way, but effectively what he says is the beginner's mind is the mind of compassion. And so, like, really the heart of our practice is this great compassion, this great gentleness, this great allowance for what's here and for ourselves, because we have to start with ourselves. But that's not to say we don't have also this very strong backbone. And it's one of the things I love about the metaphor of our practice, to sit upright, to have this, I've heard it described this way, a soft front, and then this very strong and upright backbone. So we have agency, and we can move, and we can act, and we can have a voice, but grounded in this knowing of, well, really what's truest about us is we're already whole. That's really more true about us than anything else. And when we forget, the returning is just this tiny little remembering, no more than the width of a hair. It's just like, oh, okay, it's right here. It's right here. I was going to say more about this. I'll just say there's a really interesting, if you're interested in this kind of thing, this phrase, practice enlightenment, there's a lovely paper online. I was really curious on the origins, the etymology of those words. And in Japanese, the phrase is shusho ito, and sort of translates as, so shu means practice, and then sho means realization as a fruition of practice, and then ito means oneness and equality. So the four words mean the oneness and equality of practice and realization. So this idea of, we're perfect as we are, and we could use a little improvement. There's a way of, I get really curious about Western ways of expressing this. And I've been recently reading the memoir of Marcia Linehan. If many of you have heard of her, she created something called dialectical behavior therapy. And she trained as a Zen teacher, actually, and she had, in the Rinzai tradition, I believe. And her whole thing is about acceptance and change. And the two parts of it are, can we accept, can we be with what's here? So that's, like we might say like realization or enlightenment. We can accept what's here. And there's this move to act, to change, to have agency, to support our own journey of awakening and healing. And it's a real paradox, this both and. We are both of those things. And that's part of, again, what I love about our tradition. It's like, it is both of those, and that's okay. To be human is to struggle, and is also to experience great joy. And in our practice, really working with both of those. I'll just share a couple of other things. As I see time here. Well, so I grew up Catholic, and was sort of steeped in prayer, and prayer to me was like just like a thing you would recite, and it had no meaning really, and it felt a little bit lifeless and very dry. And I felt there was a lot of shame and guilt involved. And sometimes I describe myself as a recovering Catholic. Um, in recent years, I've come to really appreciate the essential mystical heart of all faith traditions, and then even traditions, humanist traditions that are not about some faith. And I'm really curious about the essential mystical roots of all of these traditions that predate organized religion. And I do trust and believe that it's a very human thing. And so these traditions have come out of this very human experience and need. Um, but I wanted to share that, our practice, especially as we sit in silence, and we have lots of devotion in our practice, and singing and chanting. Um, but times are tough. I don't know about you, but I sometimes feel the need for some help. And so, we practice with each other, and we have a teacher or a spiritual friend that we talk to, and that's really wonderful. And it's another thing I really appreciate about our practice. But sometimes just during the day, I feel like I kind of need to invoke something bigger than myself. And it's not going to be God, because unless you interpret God as the, universal energy of love and dynamism that permeates everything. So I could be down with that. But sometimes it feels like it needs to be a little bit more specific. And so I wanted to share with you, just in the last couple of moments here, some things that I have found helpful. Um, when I practiced in the Tibetan tradition, we used to do a practice called White Tara practice. So we would do this an hour-long practice. And the first part was we would do this guided meditation where we would visualize the deity White Tara. And so White Tara is a manifestation of Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, and has manifestations in multiple forms, male, female, non-binary, all sorts of different forms. But White Tara specifically is a figure of healing and compassion. Well, they're all figures of compassion, but specifically around healing. And in that practice, we would sit in the shrine room, and in this Tibetan center I used to practice in, we'd be sitting there and we'd be chanting, and you could be sitting there and you could have your cup of tea and you could be drinking as you're practicing. And then every now and again, like the door would open and a dog would crawl into the shrine room and just kind of plop down on the floor. And then there was cats in the center I used to practice in, and then a cat would come in and would actually curl up next to the dog sometimes. One time, I think it was one of the dogs actually peed on the floor during practice, and it was just lots of room for all of that to happen. So it was a very sort of lighthearted, open space of practice. And we would recite the mantra of Tara, and the mantra of Tara is Om Tare Tutare Turi Swaha, Om Tare Tutare Turi Swaha. And we would recite that mantra 108 times. And the practice was you'd recite it out loud a couple of times, and you would sort of soften and soften back to a whisper. And the idea was you would whisper it no more loudly. It wouldn't, so that the sound wouldn't pass sort of the neck of your shirt, or the hem of your shirt, or this part. And one of the things I wanted to name is like that subtlety of starting speaking and then getting more and more and more subtle. To me, is just another signal of this hair's breadth, like this focus on subtlety, and not as a thing to go after, but just like so easy, just this gentleness of a whisper. But I'll just say, sometimes when times are tough, when I say that, I mean when I'm working with something that I'm finding hard, and I feel like I need extra help, I will turn to mantras. So I will turn to the Tara mantra, and that's been very helpful sometimes, because I can imagine this figure. And even though I know somehow that this figure and I and we are all the same, and somehow each of us is the Buddha of compassion, it's helpful to just I love that phrase, throw yourself into the house of the Buddha. Just like kind of throw myself at this White Tara figure and be like, I really need your help right now. Can I phone a friend? And just really inviting that in. And that's, again, it feels like a very human need, and something that is available to us. I remember reading, I think it was Uchiyama Roshi, I think it's in Opening the Hand of Thought, talking about being in hospital and not being able to sit zazen. and reciting the mantra. I think it was Namu Kanzeon Bosatsu. So, praise to Kanzeon, the Buddha of compassion, or Kanon. So just wanted to offer that to you. And I've even at times, I remember once finding an old Catholic prayer, because I wanted something where it's like, the words were something like, help me, I need your help. Can I please get some help here? So I found one of those prayers and I just changed the words to, for me, it was Kanon, and changed the wording to add that in there. And that was like a little extra level of support. But I also find great solace, and I'm sharing this with you as support for your own practice, in music and poetry and the words of others who have, reflected on these things. We recently went to see the singer. I was telling telling a friend about this recently, Michelle Ndegeocello here in San Francisco. She's this wonderful, if you're interested, there's a Tiny Desk concert of her performing some of these songs, but there's one song called Love. And I really see this as a prayer. And I wanted to just share with you these couple of words that's in this. So in this song, she says, well, when it's dark, it's hard. Will you seek to solve yourself? Me, I take the darkest corner, whistling to myself. I love that phrase. It just strikes me as such a great metaphor for our zazen practice. Take the darkest corner, we sit down, we face the wall. Sometimes we're in the corner of a room, and whistling to myself is such a rich image. And sometimes when we're sitting there, we can hear our breath whistling. And then I just want to share a couple more words she shares. She says, to live in love is to be uncertain. To live in love is to bear the burden of so many who yearn to know. My life matters. To live in love is to bear the burden of so many who yearn to know. My life matters and our lives matter. And so I feel that really resonates with our Bodhisattva vow. If when some of us take vows to continue to practice to help others. Marcia Linehan in that memoir talks about her own mental health struggles, and she vowed, if I get out of hell, I'm going to go back in there and help everybody else get out of hell. And that's what she really has been doing. And then the last words in this song that I'll share with you are, love takes off the mask that we fear we can't live without. Love takes off the mask that we fear we can't live without. So again, I feel in our practice just this very gentle returning and returning, and that hair's breadth remembering, and very subtle letting go. And we can let the mask, we can let the protection, we can let the barriers dissolve just a little bit, because we have to take care of ourselves, and sometimes those barriers are there for good reason. So we don't want to rip things out in a way that's not safe, but that we can just allow very, very gently those things to settle. There's lots more I could say, but I am aware of time. Yes, I had a whole poem I was going to read, but I'm just not going to do that. I want to make time for any questions and conversations. So I'll just say, my encouragement is, if there's anything you take away from this, is to really channel that the heart of this seems to be about being good to ourselves, being kind to ourselves, and then bringing that to others. And that the move to remember that is a really subtle and small one. All right, wonderful to be with you. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Really, really appreciate your sharing the Dharma with us this morning. And you've invited us to react and ask questions or make comments. So I'll be quiet, and we'll just do that by raise of hands. If somebody has something they want to say or question, you just raise your hand and state your question.
I agree with you about that hair's breadth when I first heard about it too. It just seemed, not hair's breadth. Yeah, is that how it goes? It's the Sing Sing Ming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Faithing.
Yeah.
Mind. But I love the way you gave us that analogy, the other one of just so close and so like a split second to come back, just turn it, when we get off track, just subtly and softly bring it back. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was taken with the phrase "is still with me" that you mentioned from beginner's mind. I've not thought of it in this way before. The way it struck me, which is beginner's mind, is compassion. I'm not exactly sure how you said it, but and I was noticing how my mind first went to, oh, that's so simple to apply with people, It's really when I stand there and the mind starts making assumptions, I just drop into beginner's mind. So often when I do that now, and I open up more and more to that person, I realize, oh, I had no idea what's going on. I was making all these assumptions why you were behaving this way or this or that. But what I hadn't taken in fully was I don't really use that with myself. So that I'm in that kind of relationship. I could be in a kind of relationship where I take notice of that with myself. All these assumptions I'm making already with myself, all these judgments I'm making with myself. Stop and apply that path towards myself. And even saying that feels kind of like a mountain to climb compared to offering it to someone else in the relational space. But I really just appreciate you bringing that up. I hadn't, it's something fresh that came alive for me out of that statement. About before. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just say what you just said there, it just struck me. I hadn't thought of it that way before, because I certainly know the experience of meeting somebody else and having all sorts of assumptions. But I actually hadn't thought of it like, goodness, I know I'm hard on myself, but all these assumptions. So thank you. That's fresh for me.
One other thing I just want to mention is that when you're walking along the beach and the waves come in, for me, that's an inhale. What's going on is an exhale. It's just a difference in way you see it. The wave comes in, so it's an exhale. But anyway.
By the way, I was thinking the same.
Exactly.
And I actually thought, oh, well, this is a really fresh take on breathing this way. This is a different experience because my mind just kicked into what you're saying. Yes. It was like the exhale would be the water moving out instead of the water moving in. And so I had a very different bodily experience breathing in that way. I appreciated it.
Yeah, I kind of had resistance to you about that. I was going, wait a minute, no. But these are the things with our assumptions, the way we're set in our way, and then he turned around and was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll try it. Yeah.
I'll just share on that specific point. I was thinking, I was started out doing it that way too. And then at some point, because in that meditation, it involves then imagining being the ocean and how in the whatever's happening on the surface with the waves at the depths of the ocean is always this stillness and this dynamism. And then somehow being and breathing as the ocean. That's so I could see both as beautiful practice. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, if you are the ocean, you can see how the ocean is breathing out, breathing in, coming back.
Yes, what I find, I go down to the beach a couple times a week, and I play my flute, and the waves break about every 7 seconds, and my breath lasts about 7 seconds. So I'm doing a duet with the ocean by breathing with it. So, and that's just another way of doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to come and hear that.
I'll jump in here. I just wanted to, thank you for your talk, and also bringing in, permission to ask for help. So much of this practice is solitary and inward, and even though we can practice in a group, so much of what we're doing is, gaining some mastery of ourselves. And sometimes that it's not enough. And I was reminded as you were talking of studying the awakening of faith, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a very small text, but it's very dense. And the soul, the heart of it is Takata Garbha, which is, Buddha nature, the seed, the womb of, and it goes into great depth about, our kind of practice going inward, the solitary. And then like the last couple of pages, it says, it's like on and on and on about our, kind of solitary practice. And then at the end, like the last couple of pages, it basically says, well, if that doesn't work, then pray to the Buddha. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of details, but I found that so humorous and, just light and compassionate, and that there are, whether it's people or energies or bodhisattvas or whatever speaks to you, that there are, the earth mother or whatever, that there are moments that we can kind of surrender to something larger than ourselves and gain some support from that too. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Monica.
So your title was From Potholes to Portals. Did I get that right? Right. And what really made my heart rejoice was when you talked about this thin hair and the subtleties of understanding each pothole as a possible portal to maybe development or maybe completeness, more wholeness than before, something like that. So it was really touching to see this bliss of the subtlety. It was like a bliss moment. This English is not my maternal language, so maybe I'm not able to express exactly what I want to say, but I just want to give you back this feeling of rejoicement.
Thank you. You expressed it perfectly, beautifully, and I feel it, so thank you.
Well, I could resonate with so many things you said. One thing that I could resonate a lot also on a personal level with what I've been going through and experiencing recently is when you brought up Catholicism. So growing up, in a religious context like that, and coming to a point where maybe it's coming full circle, it's becoming whole again. that's what's been happening to me. And it's been happening because of also what you mentioned, seeing the mysticism, seeing the experience of the people who stand behind these organized religion organizations, etc. And I feel for me that's a place of love and wholeness, and yeah, my heart rejoices when I hear that from another person, from you today, to really, bring it back to the common denominator, what unites us, no matter what the name, what the shape. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. If I could just say a couple of words on just the last couple of things. One is language and maternal language. And the writer Samuel Beckett decided to write in the French language because he felt bounded by what he could express in his own language. And so I love this idea of languaging in a way that is uniquely ours. And there's something really precious about that, whatever the, tongue is. And then what we just said about that my grandfather passed away in 21 years ago, 2004. And I only learned then when he was passing, he was a very gregarious person, fond of a drink, as we say in Ireland. But he was a real fan of Thérèse of Lisieux, and he would always correct people. He would say it's Lisieux. He was really specific about that. Just in the last couple of months, I didn't look into this at all, but that name came up, and because I've been really interested in this mystical thread that unites all of these traditions, and how this woman had written all of these accounts of her experience of wholeness and connection. And so just I feel that all of these riches that are available to us when we can open ourselves to them. And so it's really precious. So thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you, because next time I get into a dark place, I'm going to head for the darkest corner. And my friend, the Persian poet Rumi said, "Let darkness be your candle."
Mm.
Yes, I feel that. Thank you.
I'd just like to add also, appreciate your attention on language. And sometimes when we can, word can be a portal or a pothole because of our likes and dislikes.
Mm.
If we are mindful, a little bit more mindful of that, of our lives, language can be an opening. You can do so much more.
Mm.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. I just say one of the things I love about Dogen, the emphasis on the word is the thing, and the poetry and the playfulness of language. And yeah, thank you.
Alan, I'm wondering if we have time, if other people don't have questions, if we could hear the poem that you were going to read.
I'd be happy to share it. Yeah, if folks want to hear it, if that's okay.
I'm ready for a poem.
We have a lot of thumbs up on poetry in the room here.
Hey, goodness, I had a few. So I had one I'd written, but it's quite long. I don't think I'm going to share that right now. I will share. Can I share two short ones? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm just sharing this. I wasn't going to share this, but this is by, and I will say I have a collection of poets that I love, and I was going to share one by an Irish poet called Anne-Marie Ní Cuaráin, but I don't have one to hand that fits this moment. I gave a whole talk on one of her poems, so she's an amazing young Irish poet. But I'll share this. This is by Padraig Otuma, who is a poet. It's called "Do You Believe in God?" And I share this just because of what we were just talking about. So this is what it's called: "Do you believe in God? I turn to you not because I trust you or believe in you, but because I need a direction for my need. You, the space between me and death. You, the hum at the heart of an atom. You, nothing. You, my favorite emptiness. You, what I turned away from and will turn to. You, my ache made manifest in address. You, silent. You, what my friends saw as they died. You contain what's not containable. You, shape of my desire." And I'll share one last one if that's okay. This is a short one by another Irish poet called John O'Donoghue. And I love this work because it's a lot about the body and the senses. So it's called A Blessing for the Senses. May your body be blessed. May you realize that your body is a faithful and beautiful friend of your soul. And may you be peaceful and joyful and recognize that your senses are sacred thresholds. May you realize that holiness is mindful, gazing, feeling, hearing, and touching. May your senses gather you and bring you home. May your senses always enable you to celebrate the universe and the mystery and possibilities in your presence here. May the eros of the earth bless you.
Alan, I don't think there's more we can say except thank you.
All we can say is the 4 vows.
Yeah.
Shall we?
We'll conclude with the 4 vows here, Alan.
Wonderful.
Thank you again.
Thank you all. Wonderful to be with you.
And I'm going to just turn the recording off.